Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here. Wednesday now, the 19th of June, 2024. Guess what? We now have Tropical Storm Alberto officially down in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, coming up out of the Bay of Campeche area, bringing some impact to Texas and Mexico. Beneficial rains, heavy rains too, and some coastal flooding. You've probably seen some of the drone video from some of the various chasers that are down there. I was down there in 2020. Remember 2020? We all do. We had Tropical Storm Beta that came into that area much farther to the north, a much smaller system. But yeah, the storm surge and the onshore flow, the coastal flooding that can happen down there near Surfside Beach and vicinity, way down southwest, not too far down from Galveston, it can be quite something. And I can only imagine what a formidable large hurricane could do. I mean, yikes. You see what we're getting with Alberto, and then, like I said, with Beta 4 years ago, September, I think it was, something like that. 2020 was a busy hurricane season. But yes, we do have impacts from Alberto, and we'll take a look at that and what to expect over the next day or so. First named storm off the list. How many more will we have? We shall see. Number one so far. Got one out of the way. So there it is. Alberto, top winds 40 miles per hour. It's a broad area. You'll see on the wind field chart in just a minute. Pressure down to 995 millibars. So it is starting to tighten up just a little bit. And it's moving to the west at 9 miles per hour. And if you are tracking this on our paper tracking map, that's where your coordinates are. 22.2 north, 95.0 west. And tomorrow afternoon, when I do my update, I'm going to throw in a little segment on how to use one of these paper tracking maps. I guess a little tutorial is in order. Some people know, they understand the lat long thing. Some people do not, and that's quite all right. So I'm going to do a quick tutorial tomorrow. I'll probably produce it and then insert it as a video, maybe play it off the desktop or something. But that's how we track these things, by latitude and longitude, and it is the exact center of the center of circulation. So if this were to have an eye, for example, it does not, but if it did, it would be the center of the eye, that latitude and longitude, and it's always out to 1 decimal place. So let's scooch down and take a look at the dashboard from the National Hurricane Center, and you can see some of these very relevant different pieces of information. First, the key messages. And remember, there are 3 or 4 of them on this one. Large wind field, that's that area in orange. So it has a huge area of tropical storm force wind, that onshore flow creating coastal flooding issues from the upper Texas coast even, heck, all the way up even to Grand Isle, Louisiana. The Gulf of Mexico, very sensitive to wind, that is for sure. Heavy rainfall going to be a big problem as well. These red areas that we're seeing on the map, very similar to if we had a moderate risk of severe weather, everybody would be talking about it. Oh, there's a big moderate today. Well, there's a moderate risk for some flooding rainfall down there in the Rio Grande Valley and beyond. So just be aware of that. That's what all of these graphics are for, to help you be aware. The rainfall potential, if you needed it in a color-coded chart, well, here you go. And as you get some of that orographic lift, I'll use black to make this pop a little bit better. This is where that rainfall and the moisture is butting up against some of those mountain ranges, and you can wring out quite a bit of rain, 16 to 20 inches according to the scale, and very heavy rain, as I mentioned, for elsewhere in parts of Texas and northern Mexico. Beneficial for sure. Flooding, certainly a problem. Be sure to stay clear of flooded roadways. Don't cross them. Come on, we shouldn't have to say this stuff over and over again, but we do, and why not? Want to keep everybody safe, right? Peak surge happening already from Sargent all the way up to Sabine Pass, and up to 4 feet in some of these areas, 3 feet elsewhere. Look at that. What a wide area of influence. And heck, let me just back this out and scoot the frame down a little bit. Yeah, so over here, Vermilion-Cameron Parish line, all the way down to the mouth of the Rio Grande. And of course, that surge would extend into Mexico, but this is just U.S. watches and warnings. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a huge area the entire northwest and western Gulf of Mexico under the influence of those onshore winds that are coming in like this, pushing the Gulf onshore into these concave areas of coast, and they just catch that water very efficiently, make it rise, and the persistent nature to it, any kind of wave action that's coming in just adds to it. No wonder. And again, I have to emphasize, man, oh man, I cannot fathom what would happen if we had a very large, well-developed, strong hurricane that made landfall perpendicular here, let's say across Corpus Christi Bay, and then all of this area is on the right front quadrant of said hurricane. This is a lesson here, a reminder again, like Beta was in 2020. Everybody forgot Beta. I mean, 2020 was eons ago, right? It certainly seems like it. Alberto should be a wake-up call. That center of circulation is going to go in Mexico. I'll show you that in a minute on the track map, on our enhanced tracking map that we've got online. But you'll see, man, the center of circulation is well removed from these impacts up here. And this is quote-unquote, well, there you go, quote-unquote, just a tropical storm. Wow, just the power of these things. It's just, you have to marvel at it. And that's why we study them, all right? So the first name, we can kind of scratch that off the list there. The next one is Beryl, Chris, Debbie, Ernesto, Francine. And it's interesting because this list is the same one from 2018, in case you were saying, hey, these seem a little bit familiar. And that includes the M storm, which in 2018, 6 years ago, of course, that was Michael, and that has been retired for obvious reasons. Category 5, devastating hurricane up in the Florida Panhandle. Some of our most celebrated work to date on capturing the impacts of hurricanes, that was Michael, and that name has been replaced with Milton. But these are the names in case you're wondering. And if you do have one of our paper maps, they're printed on the maps. And just in case we go to William and beyond, there is an auxiliary list or an additional list of names. And that begins, I believe, with Adria, A-D-R-I-A or something like that. Yup. So we'll see. How far down will we get? Alberto is out of the way. So look, this is what it looks like on the track map. And this is such a great example. This was gift wrapped to people like me and others in the social media weather communication business. That is the center of circulation. That is the point that we plot right down there, right in the middle. This is the error cone of where that center should be most of the time. But the effects are well removed all the way up here. And I'll even draw down myself into Mexico. That's all that onshore flow. Look at that amount of coastline. Wow. And this is from a large tropical storm born out of that Central American gyre, almost like this monsoonal gyre, this huge area of low-level energy that finally came together enough today to be classified as a tropical storm. Remember, that's just a name and a classification that we as humans slapped on it. There it is. It's got the, hi, my name is, should say Alberto. The effects, the impacts, that's what really matters. The other stuff is for cataloging, historical purposes, communication, and whatnot. It doesn't matter as much as the impacts. So you have one pile of information over here, the name, the latitude, the longitude, the wind speed, all the stats, and then you have all the stuff that's really more important in the other pile, and those are what we call the impacts. We've already gone over those, but just reminding you. So look at that. That's amazing. And by the way, this tracking map is on our HurricaneTrack Insider site. Our patrons at the $10 level and up have access to this. I think it is one of the greatest tracking tools on the internet. I don't know all of them, but I do know that this is the only one that has our assets on it. These are our permanent cameras. This is over in Port Aransas, over at Mr. William Campbell's place. Good friend of the project. And yes, it's looking out at a graveyard, but that's okay. Rainy there. They needed it. William texted me earlier today and said we're getting some much needed rain. That's a good thing. But yeah, these are our permanent cameras. And then, of course, when we have a hurricane landfall, we set up our cameras, and you can go right down to street level and see where we put our cameras during hurricane activity. This is all part of what we do with the investments from Patreon. And in fact, one of our patrons created this map. We got a lot of people collaborating, but I wanted to show it off a little bit. And of course, you can get all the tracking information just by clicking on this. Pretty freaking cool, huh? And then you get a pop-out window with that. Oh, Will Woodgate, you did such a great job, sir, and I hope you're watching today. And you have a big smile on your face. This is his project. He asked me in 2020, when everybody was shut up and locked down, hey, man, would you like an enhanced tracking map? I think you've mentioned that from time to time. And I got all this time on my hands, and instead of going crazy, maybe I can help out. 4 years later, it didn't take him 4 years, but I'm saying it's evolved over 4 years. Oh, I'm so proud of it. Anyway, back to the story at hand. Hey, when you got good tech, you want to show it off, right? So there's the Vorticity signature of Alberto, much more concentrated today. Still not completely solid. You got these large areas, these lobes sticking off, more energy down here, some over in the eastern Pacific, but enough of it concentrated right over here to be classified as tropical storm Alberto. This is that other area that we are watching. It looks like a bean or whatever. Not going to do much. It does not appear at this time. And then we've got some more energy sitting out here in the tropical Atlantic, still stretched out. We'll see where this ends up over time as it moves to the west. It's still June. We typically do not look in the tropical Atlantic for development this time of year, but we shall see. All right, broad satellite view of what's happening out there. There is Alberto, part of that large circulation over this area. Pretty impressive overall. And then finally today, enough deep thunderstorms, or what we call convection, wrapped into this thing. It developed, and we have the low-level center tightening up, and there you go. We've got Alberto. Now this is certainly interesting. It's flaring out more than we have seen, and it is going to make its way over to the coast and end up somewhere in this vicinity over the next couple of days. Could bring some squally weather, showers and thunderstorms, locally gusty winds. That's what that means, squally weather. But beyond that, probably not going to amount to too much. Close-up satellite animation of Alberto down here, and the center of circulation tucked in here somewhere. Deep thunderstorm activity wrapping into this feature. Wow, pretty impressive. Very large circulation, kind of dry, open areas. Yeah, there's some rain showers under here, but it's not completely wrapped. But it's trying. It's got that embryonic look, this sort of tail to it over here. Deep thunderstorms wrapping in there. And there is time before it reaches the Mexican coastline over here for it to strengthen a little bit more. And one more little piece of info. Once this is, I think it's a depression and higher, it starts counting towards what we call the seasonal ACE, or accumulated cyclone energy. And basically that is the amount of energy that these things output. Tells us a lot about the quality, not just the quantity. And the stronger they are, the higher that ACE score is. Think of it, we just wrapped up the NBA Finals. Think of it as, like Jason Tatum or somebody scoring, 65 points in a game. You understand? Or, in hockey, a particular player really racks it up, gets a hat trick plus some, whatever. Individuals contributing to the overall score. That's what happens with tropical systems as well. When they are short-lived and weak, they get a low ACE score. And when they are long-lived and very strong, like Ivan 2004, you get a very high ACE score. That one alone, I believe, had an ACE score in the 70s, maybe 70 or so. Yeah, 70 from one storm, one hurricane. This one will, probably one or two or whatever. But the ACE count begins as well for those of you following at home. Some people don't care. I think it's an interesting metric. All right, I was hoping the radar animation would be loaded for me. It looks like it is. Good, it didn't screw me over. This is a cool thing, but sometimes on my browser, this old computer here, 7-year-old laptop, it gets funky. Again, I just wanted to show you the circulation of this thing, the overall influence that it's got. Alberto, the center, way down here. Look at all that rain headed for the Texas coast. Just another example of how big and broad this feature is. And it is taking advantage of some very warm Gulf of Mexico sea surface temperatures 30 degrees Celsius, so you're talking about mid to upper 80s in some cases. And it's going to traverse that all the way to landfall, it does appear. The rest of the Gulf has been churned up just a little bit, so we've knocked down the sea surface temperatures to a slightly more reasonable 28, 29 Celsius, but it's only June 19th. Lots of time on the clock for these temperatures to rebound and get ridiculously warm again as we see what happens next. Speaking of what happens next, let's check out the GFS. Another great example of using the models here to show what's what. Look at that giant area of green sitting over here. That's just all that energy and moisture, humidity associated with Alberto, the low pressure area right in here. And if we put this into motion, you see everything slide onshore over the next couple of days, taking that moisture with it. Yeah, a lot of moisture associated with our friend Alberto. I guess you could say friend. It's bringing some beneficial rain to this area and elsewhere, right? Friendly little system, not too strong. Then you got this other feature sitting out here. Lots and lots of dry air around it. So I doubt it's going to do very much at all over the next several days. Looking at the lower levels of the atmosphere now, the vorticity signature, one of my favorite areas to watch. GFS, 850 millibars. And this is again from the 12Z run today. This is the initial shot. And you can clearly see, even at the 5,000 foot level, the skeleton of the system, so to speak. Very broad, very large, and the vorticity not really concentrated in there, but enough, certainly, that we do have a tropical storm. And then notice this little doodad right here. That's that other feature we're watching, and we'll see what happens with it as we go through time. By the way, that's why we call them invest and whatever instead of doodads. All right, so later today to this evening, Alberto makes its way onshore into Mexico there, and it dies away fairly quickly. But that's going to be a big rainmaker, especially for those mountains in there. And then we watch this guy right here, this little bump of energy headed towards Florida and elsewhere. And that finally makes its way, maybe, just maybe, it ekes out, I don't know, tropical depression, possibly. Like, that wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not counting on it. Nevertheless, this is 2 days out, so Friday morning, you folks up here in northern Florida, southern Georgia, could be kind of breezy, rainy, squally, that kind of thing. And, just to go back to the track map, we do have a couple cameras over here that we can keep an eye on. One of them focused in right on the beach. Whoops, I guess I have to update it again because it says it doesn't exist. I'll have to fix that. But the idea remains, yes, we do have some cams over here, and if this comes in, we'll be able to see what happens from point blank range. Kind of see what that error is. Maybe I screwed something up. What about the rest of the period? That's 48 hours out. And then look, another system tries to get going. So we could potentially, let me just bring me back on, possibly have the second system there, this right here, develop, maybe, low chance. That could be Beryl. And then this feature over here over the Yucatan, when we're out at about, what is that, 60 hours or so, that starts to ramp up. 36 hours, geez, not even. So by 60 hours, it comes together. So maybe 2 or 3 named storms by the end of the weekend, we're all of a sudden caught up with 2020. Possibly. I certainly put a lot more stock in this trying to get going than this ending up doing something. But these small features, harder for the global models to really resolve. So you never know. That little system could ramp up right before landfall and become a named storm, tropical depression, whatever. And we'll be up, like I said, to potentially 3 named storms before we know it. Finally, one more thing I want to show you. The upper levels of the atmosphere related to Alberto. Alberto sitting right in here somewhere. Upper level winds, not terrible, not ideal. Big upper level low sitting over here. Holy cow. And that helps to ventilate the system, draining that air out on this side. But otherwise, you know, not the best that I've ever seen. But certainly you don't have these blues and greens and yellows, meaning strong wind cutting across the feature. That's the big key there. That's what we look for. How are the upper level winds in relation to the system? Is it being sheared? Is it going to run into that shear, that kind of thing? And over the next couple of days, Alberto basically moves with that favorable pattern by and large. And just to show you, we start to get some pretty strong easterly winds at the upper levels with that other system coming across. So depending on how fast it's moving west, I don't know, that could be interesting. And then there's an upper level low sitting down here, might help ventilate it from the southwest side. Just a few things to watch as we continue on through this hurricane season that is now, as my friend Dylan Federico from Dallas said, we're on the board. We got one named storm, not very significant impacts, but impacts nonetheless. Already covered that, of course, and we'll see what happens going forward. All right, this is the last day of this version of the Sudduth family vacation. We're up in Charlotte right now. Going to take in a Major League Soccer game this evening. Really looking forward to that. They are a lot of fun. We're playing Orlando. Charlotte is playing Orlando tonight, and then I'll be home tomorrow. So tomorrow's update, instead of a curtain in the hotel room, it'll be my background of the old HurricaneTrack office. All right? Thanks for tuning in, though. I do appreciate it from all of us at HurricaneTrack. Glad you made the time to stop by and see what I was thinking today. I am Mark Sudduth. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.